Cycles. Can you talk about the cycles of depression?
So with the cycles of depression, I mean, it depends on if the person is like, definitely if the person has like clinical depression, or if they may be like bipolar or something like that. Of course, that's not going to be something that you would just automatically get from the a pandemic, because that would be more of like, okay, there was an incident that happened, you're
Yeah.
adjusting. Like the clinical term would be like an adjustment disorder if you've had these symptoms for a certain period of time as a result of an incident. But if you're looking at like clinical depression, I mean, there's different forms of depression, but a lot of people that cycle through different forms would be like people that are bipolar. So,
Mm.
and even in terms of the cycles, it can be different. Like, so you have some people that have like seasonal depression. You have like this like a rapid cycling. So it can look like someone is up one day
Hmm.
and 2 days later they're down. So like
Mm.
even within the same week, they could be at different points.
Wow.
Or it could even be like for 1 month, they're fine. They seem to be normal. The next month, they're in a deep depression.
Mm.
And then you just have people that are, for the most part, they appear to be normal for the most part for a while, and then all of a sudden they'll go into like a deep depression. So
Wow.
like that's more like major depressive disorder, things like
Mhm.
that. So it's a lot of different forms of depression.
Yeah.
If someone thinks that they may be depressed, especially with dealing with like clinical depression, I would definitely recommend that they see a therapist, a psychologist or psychiatrist regarding
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is some good stuff and what to watch out for. Yes, it
Mhm.
is. So let's get into the stages of the grief.
Right, right.
Yes.
So with the stages of grief, I'm not sure if you ever heard of Kubler-Ross,
No.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So basically, she's a psychologist. It actually might be a psychiatrist, but she developed these stages, these 5 stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually these particular 5 stages are stages that a lot of therapists use when helping their clients to understand what they're going through as a result of having a loss. Now, it could be a loss of a person just as well as it could be a loss of a job. It could
Mm.
be a loss of a relationship. So when we say the stages of grief, I just want
Mm-hmm.
to help, everybody to understand that it doesn't necessarily have to be a loss of a person, because normally when we think of grief, we think like we lost someone that
Yeah.
was close to us, but they don't necessarily have it doesn't have to be a person that we lost. It could be
Mhm.
something that we lost. Like maybe you were
Yeah.
in a relationship for 10 years, you thought you were going to be with this person forever, and then suddenly the
Yeah.
relationship ended. You can still go through some of these same stages of grief.
Wow.
um so I'm going to talk a little
Excellent.
bit about those stages.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So the first stage of grief is denial.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know what denial is. Basically, we're not believing that something actually happened.
Yeah.
So if this could look like, okay, as soon as the person, maybe as soon as we were informed that that person had passed away, we're like, no, this can't be happening. We may
Mm.
say that like, oh, maybe the person is joking. The person had told us that that person had passed away. It's just that we're in complete denial about the fact that we actually lost that person. Or again, like given the other example of losing a job,
Mm-hmm.
like denial about the job, like
Yeah.
no, they probably are going to, keep us on or something like that. So it can look like different things depending on the situation, but basically you're denying that the incident actually happened. And what I want to point out is that this is not necessarily a bad thing that you're
Mm-hmm.
denying it when it first happened, when you're first given the information. It's really just our body's way of protecting ourselves,
Mm.
like our mind's way of trying to cope with that initial shock of
Yeah.
hearing something traumatic.
Yeah.
And so that's really what this is all about. And actually, with that being said, all of the stages of grief, we're talking about Kubler-Ross's stages of grief today, but if you go online, there's so many other people that have their own concepts of the stages of grief, but they pretty much follow the same type of concepts or ideas. But I do want to point out that just because there are certain stages, and there are stages like 1 through 5, but you don't have to go through each stage just like the next person.
Yeah, I
Just
have a question. Yeah.
mhm,
Now, is
mhm.
it possible to stay stuck at that first stage?
It is definitely possible. Yes, it is. And not even just the first stage.
Mm,
It's possible to stay stuck in any of the
any
stages.
of them. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Wow.
Just as well as it's possible to go back and forth through the stages. So
Oh,
like you started
wow.
with the first one, you got through the second one, you stayed in the third one forever, then you went back to the second one. And I would say probably more so than anything, there could be situations that come up that could be triggers for you
Mm,
that could possibly send you back into
mm.
any of those other stages. But just know, yes, you can stay stuck in a particular stage.
Okay.
Um, and it's okay to go through any of those stages. That's the first thing I really want people to know, that it's okay to this is really just like psychologists coming up with a way for us to understand
Yeah.
what we're going through, because it just human nature, when we're able to put a label on something or to be
Mhm.
able to define something, that actually helps us to cope with
Okay.
what we're going through. So just having like, okay, now I know that I'm going through this or these things when I was saying this or doing that, that was because I was in denial during that
Mm,
time. And it helps to normalize it. So we know that we're going through this thing or we're not going through this thing, but we're not the only ones. There's a
yeah.
lot of people that go through these things. Whenever we're able to normalize things like that, in general, it helps us to cope with the loss.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the next stage of grief is anger.
Mm,
And so we know what anger is. And like I talked about earlier, that anger and that depression can kind of be related as well. So if you think about it in those terms, when you've lost someone, you've now come to grips with the fact that it actually happened.
mhm.
Might be sad, and that would
Yeah.
be a normal response, right?
Yeah.
So some people, because of all of the sadness and those type of elements to it, they may go into that anger,
Mm,
right? Where we're angry that it happened. And it could be so many different ways that we express that anger. Like maybe we might be, angry with ourselves. Maybe we're angry with everyone else around us.
mhm.
Maybe and it could be, we went through this thing. Why doesn't everybody else around us go through this thing?
Yeah.
We've gone through. So it could be different things that we're experiencing as it relates to anger, but definitely anger is one of those signs, or those signals of grief. And again, you can stay in there for a long time. Some people do actually stay in that stage
Okay.
for a long
I
time,
have
and
a
that
question.
angry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why would someone be angry at themselves?
Because they're blaming themselves.
Mm,
Now, they could be blaming themselves for maybe what they felt like they didn't get to do
okay.
while the person was alive. They could even be blaming themselves for thinking that um it was something that they could have done
Mhm.
differently, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of some stages of grief talk about guilt as
Mhm.
well. So
Yeah.
that's where that would kind of play in as well, like talking about like I feel guilty because I didn't do this thing. But what could be coupled with that is anger too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm blaming myself, or I should have done something different, but I wasn't able to do it. And
Yeah.
it could be related to what happened and how the loss came about. And it could be related to the fact that they didn't get to do something before with that person or for that person before they actually lost that
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think about that too, because like my mom passed last year and we were planning a trip for Christmas, but she didn't make it. She passed so fast.
Mhm.
But I wasn't angry at myself, but it was like I really did want to go on that trip. I was looking forward to it because it's so
Mhm.
nice and peaceful. And
Mhm.
that would have been our time to spend together because she had been wanting to get with me, like, let's do this, let's do that. But I was so busy, 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 working. busy trying to, do the entrepreneurial thing, ministry, just busy and not taking that time. So I would like to encourage our viewers, if you do have relatives that are reaching out to you, that want to spend time with you, put them on your calendar, spend that time, because we just don't know when we are leaving this place. We just don't know. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Don't take it for granted. Don't
Yeah.
take anybody in your life for granted, because we just never
Definitely.
know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that third stage of grief has to do with bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
And so with bargaining, we're just like trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
And it can look different. Like let's say if someone has a terminal disease,
Mm-hmm.
and they may be, the bargaining might look like trying to plead to God that, God, if you could just take this away from me, if you could just heal me, I promise, like I'll do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'll serve you. Like it could look like that.
Mm-hmm.
It can look like different things, but the bargaining is just like that, the way that we rationalize what's happening, or what has already happened,
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that loss. So, we're going to change our lives around, or we're going to try to do this differently. So you're trying to come to grips with what has happened or what didn't happen. And it's like your mind's way of trying to like put it all together.
Yeah.
Bring
Trying to
those.
buy yourself some time.
Mhm.
Time is running out and bargaining
Yeah.
with God. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So that the next stage that people go through is depression. So we talked about how anger could be connected to that, but this is the stage that a lot of people, when they really set into that depression, because you've already been through the denial, you've already kind of like maybe you've gone through that period of trying to figure out or work something out in your mind. But at this point, it's like people realize that, you know what, this is it. Like, this is whatever that loss is, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And so now you have to decide how you're going to live with losing that thing. And that's not always a great place to be. It's not always an easy place, I should say, to be and to go through. Now that you are really coming to grips with, like, this is what has happened, and now this is my life without this person, without this thing. And if you don't have the support systems in place, if you don't have the coping mechanisms in place, you can talk about staying in a stage. You can really stay in this stage for a long time if you don't have those things in place to help you to get through.
Yeah. I think about, like, after the funeral is over and you have to go back home, and some time goes by. It's like, it's very important to check in on family members. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that could be difficult as well, having to clean out the clothing, and get things in order and rearrange things. So that can be depressing in itself, having to go back and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the reason why the support system is so important, because nobody should really have to go through that alone.
Yeah.
Like this, like you said, like after the funeral and cleaning things out, like that is a difficult process to go through.
Yeah.
So, and it's like you're constantly being triggered and reminded of those things, and nobody should have to go through that alone.
Yeah. Amen. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So the last stage is acceptance. And when we say acceptance, we don't mean that you get over it. We don't mean, and I want to make this a point, because a lot of times what makes people make it difficult for people to go through the stages, or even to allow themselves to like process what's happening, is because they feel like if they accept it, then it's as if that person doesn't exist anymore. It's as if they're completely losing that person. And we don't want to feel like that. We want to hold on to that thing that we love so dearly, or that person that we love so dearly. So what acceptance really is just coming to a place within yourself where you acknowledge what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
You acknowledge that it's okay to feel.
Yeah.
You recognize that you're going to have some good days and you're going to have some days that may not be too great,
Yeah.
but that you have what you need internally and also externally to get through it.
Yeah. And all of
And
those
it's
emotions are good to have. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's healthy. Like
Yeah.
God made us with these emotions.
Right.
He
Right.
gave us the ability to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we shouldn't be afraid. Like if not everybody cries, but if you need to cry, it's okay to cry.
Yeah. Let it out. Yes.
Yeah, let it out. However it is that you need to let it out. Some people just let things out by like journaling. That's another strategy that I have people do as well. Because sometimes you just can't say it. You
Yeah. Yeah.
can't speak it,
Mhm.
but you can write about it.
Right.
You
Right.
can write about how much that person meant to you.
Mm-hmm.
Meant to you. And you can write about like things that you remember about them,
Mm-hmm.
and things that you could learn and that you've gleaned from the relationship, and how
Yeah.
you can use the things that you've established from knowing that person for the future.
Yeah.
Like how
Yeah.
you're going to continue to carry them in that relationship you had. Like journaling is a great way to do that.
Yep. Yep. They will always be with you. I think about my mom every day, especially if I'm cleaning up something.
Hmm.
'Cause
Hmm.
cleaning was her thing. So like if I'm walking through my house, cleaning up something, she's on my mind.
Mm.
And even when I look in the mirror every day, I look just like my mom.
Wow.
So they're always with you, those memories
Hmm.
always with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. They're always with you. And those are things that you can do to work towards acceptance, So we're just accepting that it happened. We're not letting go of the person in our
Right.
hearts.
Right. Right.
There's ways that we can continue um to respect them, to honor them.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that help you to work towards acceptance. Like be it, you celebrate the birthday every time it comes around, just
Yes.
remembering their lives.
Yes.
Um, whatever it is, that you write a poem to them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are ways that you work
We,
through and work
yeah.
towards acceptance.
Yep. And other ways to honor their memory is like maybe they were part of an organization. I mean, you get
Yeah.
involved in that, and every year you honor them that way. So there are things to keep their memory alive.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually a great point. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
those are the 5 stages of grief.
yes, awesome, awesome. Now you mentioned triggers a while back. Do triggers ever go away?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going to say no is because triggers typically come from our environment. And it would be great if we can control what happens in our environment, but we
Mm-hmm.
can't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what can change is, and what we can have more control over is the way we respond to the
Mm-hmm.
triggers.
Okay.
And then the more you work through like some of the things we talked about today, the less I guess sensitive you might become to
Yeah.
some of those triggers.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone says, like if you lost someone and someone says their name, maybe initially you would have to just leave the room.
Yeah.
Over time, and as you continue to work towards all those things we talked about today, you might be able to hear their name and not have to leave the room.
Right. Right.
You learn the skills to be able to process it within yourself, so that it doesn't have that heavy control over
Mm-hmm.
you, so you can still continue to live your life,
Yeah.
even though you might see things that remind you, or kind of maybe you see a flower and that represents that person. You may feel something, but
Yeah.
you will be able to get to a point where you can still go throughout the rest of your day, as opposed to maybe when it first happened, you saw that flower and then you had to leave work because you just could not, you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't keep it together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you learn strategies
to cope.
to manage the triggers.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's like an internal warning,
Mm-hmm.
something that's external that triggers an internal warning,
Internal.
and it
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel very uncomfortable. So are they thinking like I'm in danger? It takes them back to a painful place.
Well, it depends on that. That question really can be answered in what type of trauma we're talking about. So if we're talking about the first part, the first way that I just answered that question is just mainly dealing with like having a loss.
Yes.
But if you're talking about a trauma on top of that loss,
Mm,
that can look very different because you're talking, it may be the person lost their loved one violently.
yeah.
So if they lost their loved one in a violent way, yeah, if they see something, hear something, smell something that reminded them of that event in which it
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
that can trigger fear. It
Yeah.
can trigger anxiety.
Mm,
Like it can go along with all of those things if you lost someone in a violent way, like whatever way that you experience that trauma, if you have a trigger, it can go back to that initial feeling.
wow.
And that's what I work on a lot with, like when I work with my trauma clients or people that have experienced trauma, is they may not just be coming in for grief, but they could have had all different kinds of traumas, different
Yeah.
things that happened to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just thinking about my city right now when I'm in Rochester, New York, and it seems like someone is getting killed every
Mm.
day. So there's a lot of trauma going on
Yep.
in that city. Yeah. A
The
lot of
family, the
fear.
people are seeing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. So how can the people get in touch with you, my dear?
So people can get in touch with me in different ways. Definitely you can follow me on Instagram. Um, Keisha as therapist and coach on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook with my Peaceful Mental Health Counseling page, or if you are a therapist and you're looking to start your own practice, then you can definitely follow me on my private practice blueprint. I have a group there where we work with a lot of therapists and trying to help therapists to start their own profitable practice. So those are ways that you can reach out to me. Of course, you can also go to my website, and that's www.peacefieldcs.com. So you can follow me and reach out to me there.
Amen. Amen. I met Keisha last year, was
Yeah,
it? We were in
I
the
think it was
course.
last year.
Learning how to get these courses going. And, we went through it. A few months later, we got those courses going. Amen. Amen. Yes, ma'am. Something else I want to talk about, though, before we go, about the grief. How important is it to be prepared? Like if something does happen, as far as
Mhm,
like the
mhm.
final arrangements, because sometimes things happen so sudden. We don't know their last wishes. We don't know where those important documents are. So it's like how important it is to have those conversations with your family members about your last wishes.
I mean, honestly, I think that is super important. And because we're so afraid of just the idea of death, this is a reason why many people don't have these conversations.
Yeah.
But what I have definitely seen and have heard from other people is that, when you hear a lot about the family drama and things that are happening once someone passes away, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of just like misunderstandings. And a lot of those things could have been like really taken care of or addressed had the conversation been had before they lost a person. So I would say, like, don't be afraid of having a conversation, just like we have life insurance. Some people are like, I don't want to get life insurance because I don't want anything, but you getting life insurance is not going to, say whether or not you're going to pass away. But if you care about people in your life, then that's what you have to think about. If I were not here, no matter what, God forbid, we want to all live long, but if something were to happen, especially if you have children, would you want them to have to be suffering?
Right.
Would you want them to have to be trying to find this money to bury you? Or
Right.
even if it's like, okay, if they live in a home, would you want them to have to leave the home if they were like depending on you or to get basic food? This is the way that you can support your family even after you're gone, by
Amen.
simply just having these conversations and making sure that things
Amen.
are in order.
Amen. Amen. You know, we're all here. We love living, but we are not going to be here, you know, forever. And it is important for us to prepare for when we do make that transition in life. Very important. And as you just stated, that life insurance policy, it is for our loved ones. So they can handle the business side of things, because there will be things that they have to take care of, you know, when you leave here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important. All right, my dear. I'm going to close us out right here. I enjoyed our conversation on today. I am definitely going to have you back to discuss another topic. I really enjoyed it. Yes, yes. Thank you so much for being here on today. And to my my viewing audience, just be mindful of your, you know, your loved ones. Reach out. If you don't have a circle, get a circle. Reach out to someone to let them know, you know, where certain items are in your home if something does happen. It's always best to be prepared instead of unprepared. And as always, if you truly desire to become a new you, you can if you want to, but you must do the work. Until next time, have an awesome day. Bye-bye.
Say so. I have been chosen by God to declare you must expose your truth in order to be free. Say so. That's right. I proclaim the praises of God that He will set you absolutely free if you want it. You care more about your feelings, protecting the family image, the dysfunction, the generational curse on the bloodline, than the innocence of the children. You are in a silent agreement with darkness instead of bringing it to the light and